Imagine, if you will, the absolute emotional and physical whiplash,
Oh, it's got to be intense.
right? Picture this. You're an elite athlete. It's a Sunday evening. You are playing in front of tens of thousands of screaming, passionate fans. The lights are blinding. The adrenaline is just surging through your
And the
veins.
whole world is watching your every move on the pitch.
Exactly. You are at the absolute pinnacle of your career. Your focus is narrowed down to the next ball, the next swing, the next sprint. But then, just a few hours later, you wake up the next morning and you find yourself trapped in a quiet, sterile hotel room.
Completely isolated.
Yeah. You are completely unable to leave the country. You look out the window and everything seems, perfectly normal. But an invisible wall has just been erected around you
Because overnight, the world changed.
because a war erupted thousands of miles away and it essentially shut down the sky. You went from being a global superstar, the center of the sporting universe, to being utterly stranded in the blink of an eye.
The contrast is just jarring. And for hundreds of athletes and, well, thousands of support staff right now, that extreme psychological pivot is their exact reality. They're caught in a web they didn't even know existed until it just snapped.
Welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to explore that very web. We are looking at the truly fascinating, utterly chaotic, and highly complex intersection of international sports logistics and sudden geopolitical conflict.
It is a massive topic.
There really is.
Ugh.
We have a huge stack of sources in front of us. We're working through a comprehensive report titled The Geopolitical Paralysis of Global Athletics, alongside a bunch of sports journalism reports from major outlets, raw aviation data from Cerium, and geopolitical analyses from early March 2026.
We've got a lot of ground to cover.
We're going to stitch all of this together to show you how a conflict in the Middle East can ground a cricket team in India, force Formula One to completely redraw its global map, and just disrupt the entire fabric of international athletics. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right, but before we map out these logistical shockwaves, we really need to acknowledge the gravity of the source material we are working with today.
Yeah, that's crucial.
We are looking at reports of highly volatile kinetic military developments, and these involve the United States, Israel, and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Our job today isn't to play armchair politician.
Absolutely not.
We want to be incredibly clear with you, the listener, that we are not taking a side. Nor are we endorsing or validating any of the political viewpoints or military actions detailed in these reports.
We're just looking at the logistics.
Exactly. We are acting strictly as neutral reporters to synthesize the facts exactly as they are presented in the source material and to show you how this specific sequence of events completely broke the global transit map.
And that neutrality is vital because the events that triggered this nightmare are intense. They're far-reaching. Let's rewind the clock just a few days to Saturday, February 28, 2026.
The day everything shifted.
According to the geopolitical analyses in our sources, this is the day the spark was lit. The reports detail a major, highly coordinated offensive launched by the US and Israel on Iranian targets.
And there's a specific detail in there that we need to highlight.
Right, the sources emphasize that this included a direct strike on the Iranian capital, Tehran, and it happened during daylight hours.
The timing is not a minor footnote. A daylight strike on a capital city is a massive escalation in modern warfare.
How so?
Well, geopolitical analysts point out that it is specifically intended to maximize psychological impact. Night strikes, while devastating, often occur while the general population is sheltered.
They're asleep, they're indoors.
Exactly. A daylight strike disrupts the daily functioning of a metropolis of millions.
Yeah.
It creates an immediate visceral shock to the system.
And the structural shock was immediate, primarily due to one incredibly significant reported event during this offensive. The sources indicate the reported death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Yeah. In the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, an event of that magnitude isn't just a ripple, it is a seismic shockwave.
It changes everything.
The reports detail an immediate region-wide mobilization. And we aren't just talking about the conventional Iranian military moving assets around.
Right, the sources highlight the Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Yes, the rapid mobilization of the IRGC and its sprawling, deeply entrenched network of regional allies. This includes Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthi forces in Yemen. The entire region transitioned from a state of high tension to full-scale mobilization almost instantly.
The retaliation was swift. And the sheer scale of it is what completely redefines the risk matrix for commercial aviation.
They didn't hold back.
No, Iran didn't just mobilize internally. They launched a retaliatory strike that altered the safety profile of the entire Gulf. We are looking at reports of massive barrages of ballistic missiles and drones.
And look at the target.
Yeah, they weren't just aiming at isolated military outposts in the desert. The sources detail strikes targeting U.S. bases and logistical assets across the Gulf region, specifically impacting Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates.
Which violently forces the conflict directly into the primary arteries of the civilian and commercial world.
The reality of that is terrifying. I mean, the reports detail explosions echoing across the Dubai Palm. They detail the interception of missiles over heavily populated areas, which obviously resulted in falling debris.
It's a miracle it wasn't worse, honestly.
Tragically, there are reported casualties in the UAE, including the death of an Asian individual from intercepted missile debris. You have Dubai, which is this gleaming metropolis fundamentally built on international commerce and luxury tourism, suddenly dealing with the reality of air raid warnings.
It shatters the whole image of the city.
The sources even mention boxing star Chris Eubank Jr. He was in Dubai at the time, and he was posting alarming footage of the city ablaze, warning people to seek shelter.
What's fascinating here is the immediate and total collapse of what we call the Middle East Bridge.
The Middle East Bridge.
Yeah. When we talk about Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha, we have to stop thinking about them merely as destination cities. In the modern, hyper-connected economy, they are the vital transit lounges of the globe.
They connect everyone to everywhere.
They are the geographical linchpins that connect Europe to Asia and the Americas to the East. When those airspace corridors come under fire, the bridge doesn't just sway, it ceases to exist.
The sheer scale of the airspace closures that followed is staggering. According to Flight Radar 24 and the aviation reports we saw total airspace closures in Iran, Iraq, Israel, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain.
Just completely wiped off the map.
Complete, absolute shutdowns. Commercial aviation simply evaporated in those flight information regions. But then you have these partial or time-based closures in the UAE, Jordan, and Pakistan.
Right. The partial closures are almost more complicated.
Well, the reports mention the UAE enacting emergency security control of air traffic zones. For a listener who isn't steeped in aviation terminology, what does that actually mean if I'm a pilot trying to navigate that airspace?
Think of it as martial law for the sky.
Martial law for the sky. Wow.
Yeah. Emergency Security Control of Air Traffic, or ESCAT, means the military takes absolute overriding control of the airspace. Civilian air traffic control no longer dictates the rules.
So the military is telling commercial pilots where to go.
Exactly. Flight paths are restricted, communications are heavily monitored, and any aircraft deviating from an approved corridor can be deemed a hostile threat.
That is terrifying for a commercial pilot.
The sky essentially becomes a tightly managed patchwork of active missile corridors and highly restricted no-fly zones. It creates an environment so complex and fraught with risk that most commercial airlines simply refuse to fly their aircraft and their passengers through it.
Let's look at the raw aviation data provided by Cirium to truly grasp the magnitude of this paralysis. On Sunday alone, just 24 hours after the initial strikes, there were 2,000 flight cancellations out of the 4,000 scheduled flights in the region.
Half of all flights gone.
That represents 900,000 lost aircraft seats in a single day. Think about that number. Almost 1 million people whose travel plans evaporated while they were sleeping.
And the bleeding didn't stop there.
Not at all. By Monday, the data shows that out of 3,779 inbound flights to the Middle East, 1,560 were canceled.
It is an unprecedented logistical hemorrhage.
I really want you, the listener, to internalize what this means for the illusion of our interconnected world. We often consume global conflict as distant news, right? A tragic event happening, quote unquote, over there.
Something on a screen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this situation vividly illustrates how incredibly fragile our global systems actually are. A kinetic military exchange thousands of miles away can instantly sever the supply chains you rely on.
It stops everything cold.
It halts business travel dead in its tracks. You could be sitting in a boardroom in London, finalizing plans to fly to Sydney, and suddenly, because of a geopolitical crisis in the Gulf, the physical route you were going to take no longer exists.
And nowhere is that whiplash, that sudden severing of global connection, more profound and visible right now than in the world of international cricket.
Let's shift our lens to the subcontinent. Right now, India and Sri Lanka are co-hosting the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2026.
A massive event.
This is a sprawling tournament. 20 international teams, 55 high-stakes matches, millions of viewers tuning in globally, and abruptly, it has become the epicenter of an unprecedented logistical crisis. We have to look at the story of the West Indies cricket team.
A squad with an incredibly rich pedigree in this specific, fast-paced format of the game.
They are absolute royalty in T20 cricket, two-time champions, having lifted the trophy in 2012 and 2016. They came into this 2026 tournament carrying the weight of massive expectations, and for the first half of the tournament, they were a juggernaut.
Just crushing people.
The reports show they went completely unbeaten in the league stage. They were dismantling opponents. But then the tournament structure forces them into the Super 8s, and it all comes down to a decisive do-or-die match against the host nation, India.
And not just anywhere in India, at the iconic Eden Gardens in Kolkata.
Right, a venue that holds tens of thousands of incredibly vocal fans, creating an atmosphere that is almost suffocating in its intensity.
The noise alone is legendary.
The pressure must have been immense, and the West Indies put up a serious fight. The match reports detail them scoring 195 for 4. Roston Chase hit a solid 40, and Jason Holder and Rovman Powell put together a massive 76-run partnership to anchor the innings.
That's a solid total.
It is, but they hit a wall. India's bowling attack, specifically spearheaded by Jasprit Bumrah, who took 2 wickets for just 36 runs, completely stifled their momentum in the crucial final overs.
Bumrah is just lethal at the death.
And then India's batters took the pitch. Sanju Samson played what the reports describe as an absolute blinder, an unbeaten 97 runs off just 50 balls. He dismantled the West Indies attack. India chased the total down, winning by 5 wickets.
Which means the West Indies tournament is instantly over.
The crushing disappointment on the field is hard to fathom. The adrenaline crashes. They retreat to the locker room, process the end of their World Cup dream, pack their massive kit bags, and prepare to fly back to the Caribbean on Monday to regroup.
But Monday arrives, the sun comes up, and the skies over the Middle East are closed.
And it's not just the heavy favorites dealing with this. The sources also highlight the journey of the Zimbabwe national team. What incredible underdog story they had leading up to this point.
Oh, everyone loves an underdog.
Captained by Sikandar Raza, they shocked the entire global cricketing establishment. They fought their way out of the group stages by beating former world champions Australia and Sri Lanka just to reach the Super 8s.
Huge upsets.
Massive. They played with immense heart, but ultimately they were eliminated after a grueling loss to South Africa at the Arun Jaitley Stadium in New Delhi. So just like the West Indies, their tournament concludes, they pack their bags, and they wait for their flight home.
The psychological whiplash here is profound, and we really need to unpack what that feels like.
Yeah, put us in their shoes.
Think about the highly regimented existence of an elite athlete during a World Cup. Your entire reality is a tightly controlled bubble. Every hour is dictated by practice schedules, tactical meetings, high-stakes matches, recovery sessions, and hyper-organized travel manifests.
You don't have to think about logistics, you just perform.
Exactly. You are insulated from the outside world because your singular focus has to be on the pitch. And then, abruptly, that entire structural scaffolding dissolves.
The bubble pops.
It completely shatters. You transition from the intense, razor-sharp focus required to face Jasprit Bumrah's bowling in front of a roaring crowd to the sudden, jarring realization that you are stranded in a foreign city. You are unable to go home watching the news in a quiet hotel lobby as a war breaks out in the exact geographical region you were supposed to fly through mere hours later.
The logistical reality of their travel plans is what trapped them. Both the West Indies and Zimbabwe squads were booked on Emirates flights that were mandated to transit via Dubai.
Of course they were. It's the standard route.
The West Indies were scheduled to fly out of Kolkata, connect through Dubai, and then head westward back to the Caribbean. Zimbabwe was supposed to fly from Delhi into Dubai and onward south to Harar. But with Dubai International Airport reporting damage from intercepted debris and the UAE airspace operating under those strict SCAT military controls,
those specific flight paths simply vanished from the departure boards.
we can see the immediate institutional response in the official press releases, which read exactly like crisis management communiques. Cricket West Indies released a statement explicitly citing security threats posed by military action in the Gulf region, which directly resulted in international airspace restrictions.
Very corporate, very measured.
Right? They were careful to emphasize that their players are safe and accommodated, but firmly delayed. Zimbabwe Cricket echoed this exact sentiment, stating their squad remains secure in Delhi. but that their travel plans are completely disrupted by the rapidly evolving situation affecting key transit routes.
But those sterile corporate statements only tell a fraction of the story. Our sources delve into the human element, and it is, frankly, heart-wrenching.
It really is.
Zimbabwe's head coach, Justin Salmons, gave an interview where he admitted that the immense uncertainty is weighing heavily on the entire team. He noted a chilling detail. Even while they were trying to focus on their final, crucial match against South Africa, the players were gathering in little groups on the boundary edge, quietly talking about the missile strikes.
How do you even play under those conditions?
How do you maintain the elite focus required to hit a cricket ball traveling at 140 kilometers an hour when you don't know how or when you will safely see your family again?
The stress becomes incredibly acute when you look at individuals who have direct personal ties to the conflict zone. The reports highlight the specific terrifying distress of Zimbabwe's veteran leg spinner, Graham Creamer.
Yeah, his situation strips away all the insulation of international sports.
His wife, Myrna, is a commercial pilot for Emirates. She lives in Dubai with their 2 young children. So you have Creamer stuck in a hotel room in Delhi, completely helpless and unable to reach his family, while the city his wife and children live in is under active ballistic missile attack and air raid sirens are wailing.
It brings the abstract geopolitical reality down to a deeply personal, visceral, human level.
It completely shatters the illusion of the sports double. You can't separate the game from reality when reality is literally dropping out of the sky over your family's home.
Which forces us to look at the macro level of sports management. This raises an important question. How does a global sporting body actually fix a problem of this magnitude?
You can't just charter a bus.
No, we are talking about moving thousands of people across the globe safely when the main road is closed.
That brings us directly to the International Cricket Council, the ICC, and the incredible institutional resilience they are being forced to demonstrate. Because right now, they are facing the ultimate logistical stress test. The sources detail that immediately following the strikes, the ICC activated what they termed their comprehensive contingency plans.
They didn't just wait for the airlines to figure it out.
No, they proactively set up a dedicated travel support desk to manage this exact unprecedented crisis.
The sheer scale of what the ICC is attempting to manage is monumental. We need to be clear. They aren't just trying to find a few dozen extra seats for a couple of stranded squads.
It's way bigger than that.
We are talking about the safe, coordinated movement of roughly 2,000 highly essential personnel. This includes the playing squads, the extensive team management and medical staffs, the massive broadcast crews with tons of sensitive equipment, the event operations staff, and the match officials.
The reports specifically mention elite umpires like Richard Illingworth and Chris Gaffney.
Right, guys who are scheduled to officiate the high-stakes semifinals. All of these people and their equipment need to be safely evacuated from various cities across India and Sri Lanka after the tournament officially concludes with the final in Ahmedabad on March 8th.
So, if the front door through the Gulf is slammed shut, what exactly is Plan B?
That is the million-dollar question.
The reports outline the alternative travel corridors. The ICC's travel support desk is desperately trying to completely bypass the Middle East. They are looking at 3 primary, massively complex alternative routes. First, the northern corridors.
Okay, flying north.
This involves routing flights up and over the conflict zone, flying through the Caucasus and Central Asia, utilizing aviation hubs like Tashkent in Uzbekistan. Second, the southern corridors. This means routing teams completely around the Arabian Peninsula and through the African continent, utilizing hubs like Nairobi in Kenya, Johannesburg in South Africa, or potentially through Egypt.
And the third?
Finally, the Pacific corridors. This route is particularly relevant for the West Indies squad. It involves a massive detour, flying them east from India instead of west, routing them through Asian hubs like Singapore or Hong Kong, across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean to the United States, before finally heading down into the Caribbean.
But drawing a new line on a map is the easy part. Implementing these Plan B corridors introduces an absolute nightmare of aviation economics and hard physics.
Let's break down why this is so difficult.
You cannot simply bypass the Middle East for flights traveling from Asia to Europe or the Americas without fundamentally altering the math of the flight. Rerouting through Tashkent or Nairobi adds, at a bare minimum, 2 to 3 hours of flight time to an already grueling long-haul journey.
And an airplane can only hold so much weight. More time in the air means you need significantly more fuel.
Precisely. And fuel is incredibly heavy. When an aircraft needs to carry 3 extra hours of heavy jet fuel to safely navigate a longer, less efficient corridor, it alters the fundamental payload calculations of the aircraft.
So they have to drop weight somewhere else.
To take off safely, the airline has to reduce weight. Often that means they have to offload cargo or restrict passenger numbers. In the context of a World Cup, that cargo isn't just luggage. It's multi-million-dollar broadcast servers, specialized athletic gear, and medical equipment. They might not be able to physically fit a team and their necessary equipment on a single rerouted flight.
And it isn't just about the machine, it's about the people flying it. The reports mention the cascading failure caused by strict airline crew duty limits.
This is a critical vulnerability in global aviation. Pilots and flight attendants are governed by incredibly strict, legally mandated duty time limits to prevent fatigue.
They can only work so many hours straight.
Right. A crew can only be legally on duty for a certain number of hours before they are required by law to rest. When you add 3 hours of flight time to a route, you very often push that flight crew past their legal limit. If a crew times out mid-journey, the airline cannot legally operate the flight.
So they're stuck in Tashkent.
Suddenly, airlines are scrambling to position replacement crews in cities. They rarely operate high-frequency flights from like Tashkent just to swap out the staff midway. It requires a logistical domino effect of massive proportions just to keep one plane moving.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and the irony is almost palpable. The ICC's entire crisis management effort is compounded by a massive geographical vulnerability. Where is the International Cricket Council headquartered? Dubai. For years, they have relied heavily on Dubai, not just as a convenient transit hub for their teams, but as their literal home base, the geographical center of their corporate operations and the heart of their broadcasting distribution.
It made so much sense until it didn't.
Exactly. Their profound reliance on the Gulf has suddenly transitioned from their greatest logistical asset into their absolute biggest vulnerability.
It serves as a perfect, albeit painful, illustration of the dangers of extreme centralization. When an organization puts all of its logistical and operational eggs in one geographical basket because it's incredibly efficient and cost-effective during peacetime, they expose the entire system to catastrophic, cascading failure when that specific region destabilizes.
I really want to emphasize to you listening right now how intricate and fragile global event planning actually is. When you sit down on your couch to watch a World Cup final, you see the pristine green grass, the athletes performing at their peak, the umpires making the calls.
The finished product.
What you don't see is the invisible, highly complex web of global logistics that makes that broadcast possible. You don't see the charter flight negotiations, the cargo manifests for camera lenses, the labyrinth of visa clearances, the dynamic hotel booking systems.
It's a massive operation.
We only ever notice this invisible web when it snaps under pressure. And right now, the web isn't just snapped. It is severely structurally broken.
And we must understand that this broken web extends far beyond the boundaries of a cricket pitch. If we pan out from the subcontinent, our sources show that this single geopolitical event has essentially paralyzed the entire global sports calendar. The ripple effect is massive and indiscriminate.
Let's expand the lens and look at motorsport. Formula One is arguably the most logistically complex, globe-trotting sport on the planet.
Moving a circus around the world every 2 weeks.
They move thousands of tons of highly sensitive car parts, massive computer mainframes, and entire garage setups around the world. The season opener, the Australian Grand Prix, is scheduled for March 8th in Melbourne. The reports indicate that over 1,000 F1 staff members, engineers, mechanics, team principals had to urgently reroute their travel because their standard itineraries were scheduled to stop over in Doha or Dubai.
And just like the West Indies cricket team, these F1 teams are being forced to heavily utilize the Pacific corridors.
Going the long way around.
F1 personnel are frantically booking highly congested flights through Singapore, Hong Kong, or desperately trying to secure seats on direct, ultra-long-haul Qantas flights straight into Perth just to avoid traversing the Middle East. But the disruption isn't just about moving people. It has directly impacted the sport's technical preparations on the track.
The sources detail a specific issue with Pirelli, the official tire supplier for Formula One. They had a highly planned, highly technical 2-day wet tire testing session scheduled to take place at the Bahrain International Circuit.
A crucial test before the season.
They had to outright cancel it. The official release cited security reasons following the evolving international situation. You can't test experimental tires when the safety of the track itself, situated in the Gulf, is compromised by the threat of intercepted missile debris. When the environment is that volatile, the sport stops.
We are seeing this paralysis impact individual athletes across a wide variety of sports, isolating them in an instant. In tennis, you have top-tier Russian players Daniil Medvedev and Andrei Rublev.
Right, they were in the Middle East.
They were competing in the Dubai Open.
Hmm.
In fact, Medvedev actually won the entire tournament on Sunday. He lifted the trophy. But the sources note that their celebrations were virtually non-existent. They are now stuck in their hotels in Dubai.
Winning a tournament and then just sit in your room.
Medvedev posted a very lucid, almost surreal update, acknowledging how profoundly strange it is to be so intensely emotional and focused on the court, only to return to a hotel and have to remain completely calm and natural when dealing with the reality of a war unfolding outside his window.
That mental switch has to be exhausting.
He mentioned receiving a flood of worried messages from friends and family, but noted, quote, "Everything is fine. It is not clear whether it will last long or not. Therefore, we are just waiting."
It's a bizarre limbo. We also see this in the badminton world. Indian badminton star PV Sindhu shared what she bluntly described as a frightening update. She found herself completely stranded in a Middle Eastern transit lounge while en route to compete in the prestigious All England Open in the UK.
And the global football apparatus is dealing with massive structural disruptions. The Asian Football Confederation had to immediately postpone their Champions League West region matches.
Just wiping them off the schedule.
High-profile games scheduled to take place in Doha and Dubai are simply off the board. Teams like Al Nassr, where Cristiano Ronaldo plays, managed to squeeze a domestic game in, but their international fixtures, which require crossing these newly contested airspaces, are completely frozen.
The ripple effect of that daylight strike on Tehran is what truly sets this apart, though. The logistical paralysis is bad enough, but we are also seeing the fracturing of a core concept in international athletics, the idea of sports as a neutral ground.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the political fallout is staggering. The most profound example of this fracturing in our sources concerns the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which is a massive multi-nation tournament being co-hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico.
This presents a massive, seemingly insurmountable geopolitical friction point.
Absolutely. The draw has already happened. Iran's national football team, affectionately known as Team Melli, is drawn into Group G. They are supposed to be deep in preparation to travel to North America to compete on the global stage.
But how do they do that now?
The geopolitical reality makes that almost impossible to envision right now. How can Iran, as a nation, participate in a World Cup co-hosted by the United States, a nation that, according to the strict reporting in our sources, just engaged in direct kinetic military strikes against the Iranian capital?
The sources provide a direct quote from Mehdi Taj, the president of the Iranian Football Federation, addressing this exact, unprecedented issue. Following the strikes and the reported death of the supreme leader, Taj bluntly stated to the press that the country cannot be expected to look forward to the World Cup with hope.
That quote is incredibly telling. It isn't just about logistics or canceled flights. It is an acknowledgement that the artificial, carefully maintained boundary we try to draw between politics, warfare, and international sport has completely dissolved.
The pretense of neutrality is just gone.
It's gone.
We even see the dark irony of this situation playing out with individual, high-profile cricketers who are nowhere near a cricket pitch. England captain Ben Stokes is reportedly stranded in Abu Dhabi, where his scheduled Lions tour was suddenly and indefinitely canceled.
Just waiting in a hotel.
And then you have Johnny Bairstow, another star England player. The sources note he wasn't there for a tournament. He was simply on a luxury holiday in Dubai when the strikes initiated.
Wrong place, wrong time.
The reports detail him ending up on social media, tweeting directly at the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, practically begging for a government rescue flight out of the UAE. It perfectly captures the terrifying absurdity of the situation. You are sipping a cocktail on a pristine luxury beach 1 minute, and the next you are pleading with your head of state for an emergency military evacuation because the sky above you is no longer safe.
And that profound lack of safety brings us right back to the raw aviation impact and the complete collapse of what we call the Gulf Hub model. Let's look at what the major airlines are actually doing in response to this crisis, because the data paints a stark picture of sudden regional isolation.
The numbers in the aviation reports are incredibly grim. Emirates, the massive state-owned airline based in Dubai that serves as the backbone of global transit, literally halted operations.
Right.
They just stopped flying. Qatar Airways, operating out of their massive hub in Doha, hit a staggering 41% cancellation rate almost immediately. Major international legacy carriers like Air India and Lufthansa completely suspended their routes to the entire region. Virgin Atlantic suspended all flights to Dubai and Riyadh.
The demand is there, but the supply vanished.
And because the supply of available flights has absolutely plummeted, while the global demand to travel remains constant. I mean, people still desperately need to get home or to business meetings. Ticket prices on the alternative, safe Asia to Europe routes have absolutely soared. The algorithm simply skyrocketed the prices the moment the supply dropped.
But there is a fascinating, almost counterintuitive secondary effect detailed in the aviation reports, and it perfectly illustrates the butterfly effect of global logistics.
Oh, this is the Indigo situation.
Let's look at Indigo, which is a massive domestic airline operating within India. The reports indicate that Indigo is suffering a heavy, cascading domestic schedule collapse entirely inside the borders of India.
Okay, I really want to emphasize this for you listening because it feels like a riddle. Why is a domestic airline whose primary job is flying people from Delhi to Mumbai failing because of a kinetic military conflict in the Middle East? It doesn't seem to make logical sense at first glance.
It makes perfect sense when you pull back the curtain on how modern airlines maximize their asset utilization. An airline like Indigo doesn't have two separate fleets of aircraft, one for domestic flights and one for international flights.
They just use whatever planes are available.
They use the exact same planes to maximize efficiency. A single aircraft might fly a morning rotation from Delhi to Dubai, turn around and fly back to Delhi, and then that exact same airframe is immediately scheduled to fly a domestic route from Delhi down to Bangalore and then onward to Chennai.
So it's constantly moving.
It is a continuous, tightly woven schedule with incredibly fast turnaround times. But when the airspace over the Gulf suddenly closes due to military action, those Indigo planes that flew to Dubai in the morning get stuck on the tarmac in the Middle East.
They can't come back.
They physically cannot fly back to India. And because
Yeah.
that specific physical plane isn't sitting at the gate in Delhi, it cannot fly the domestic route to Bangalore.
Wow. So a business traveler in India trying to catch a routine local flight for a meeting is completely grounded because of a geopolitical conflict occurring in Iran and the UAE. The interconnectedness of these systems is just staggering.
It represents the absolute death of the safe hub narrative. For the last 2 decades, modern global sports scheduling and, frankly, global business travel has relied heavily on a specific geographical serendipity.
Location, location, location.
Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha are perfectly situated halfway between Europe and Asia and halfway between the Americas and the Pacific. They marketed themselves brilliantly as safe, hyper-efficient, politically neutral transit oases.
It was the perfect setup.
The entire logistical model of modern international terminus assumes, without question, that these hubs will always be open and secure. But as the events of early March 2026 have shown, that era might be definitively over. The concept of an untouchable, safe global hub is an illusion when ballistic missiles enter the equation.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive talking about the intense psychological whiplash of the elite athletes trapped in their hotel rooms. But what we've unpacked is so much larger than a delayed flight.
It's a systemic failure.
A sudden geopolitical crisis, triggered by unprecedented daylight strikes in the Middle East, hasn't just stranded cricket players like the West Indies and Zimbabwe squads. It has fundamentally aggressively exposed the extreme fragility of the centralized logistics model that holds the entire global sports calendar and global travel together.
The vulnerability is right out in the open now.
We rely heavily on a single, vital transit bridge in the Middle East to seamlessly connect the world. And when that bridge catches fire, the entire system, from top to bottom, grinds to a halt. From Formula One mechanics frantically seeking flights to Perth, to tennis champions trapped in Dubai, to domestic commuters in India waiting for planes that will never arrive, everyone is caught in the exact same logistical paralysis.
It is a profound vulnerability that forces us to look ahead and ask some very uncomfortable paradigm-shifting questions about the future of international events.
What kind of questions?
Well, if the neutral transit hub model is now permanently compromised by the brutal reality of modern drone swarms and ballistic missile warfare, how does global sport fundamentally adapt? This leaves you with a final thought to mull over, something the sporting bodies haven't yet addressed publicly.
I love this part.
Will future global events Massive undertakings like the Olympic Games or the FIFA World Cups have to be completely decentralized. Are we looking at a future where instead of gathering the entire world in one centralized host nation, tournaments are played simultaneously across completely different, localized, heavily secured regions?
Like you play your bracket in your home region, someone else plays in theirs.
Perhaps the industry will have to lean heavily into immersive virtual reality and advanced digital broadcast integration to allow athletes to compete together in a shared digital space without ever having to cross volatile international borders. If the skies are no longer guaranteed to be safe to traverse, the very way humanity experiences, coordinates, and celebrates international unity through physical sport may be forever irreversibly changed.
That is a wild but incredibly relevant thought to end on. It completely reframed how we might consume global events in the next decade. It really makes you question the permanence of the massive, invisible systems we take for granted every single day.
The invisible web.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this comprehensive breakdown helped you unpack the incredible, complex, fragile web connecting global conflict, aviation logistics, and the sports we love. Remember to stay curious, keep looking at the bigger picture, and keep questioning the invisible systems that connect our world. Until next time.